Hello and welcome to the Benie Uche Show. On this episode of the Benie Uche Show, I'm going to bring into your homes, wherever you're watching, an interesting guest. He's very interesting because he's a man versed in international affairs, international relations, multilateral relations, unilateral relations, law and more of law. When you talk about my guest, his name is becoming really, if it's not already, a household name. He's one person who can, at the bat of the eye, quote law, tell you where each country is going right or going wrong. And I think he's a man for the position he's occupying right now because he's sitting on one of Nigeria's most powerful think tank institutions. But then before I bring my guest on the set for you to see and say, oh, so I'm not surprised he's the one, I want to give you a little rundown or give you some brief about his background and where he's coming from. My guest is the former Director, Democracy and Development Studies, Institute for Peace and Conflict Studies, Abuja. He is one of the 8 founding professors of Imo State University, which later became Abia State University. He's one-time adjunct professor, Rivers State University of Science and Technology, adjunct professor, Enugu State University of Science and Technology, former senior lecturer at University of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, a part-time postgraduate lecturer at University of Abuja, a one-time professor of law at University of Uyo. He is also a doctorate graduate of the Institute of International Studies of University of Geneva, and prior to that, he obtained a postgraduate diploma in international and comparative air law from London Institute of World Affairs. He also has a Master of Law from University of London, and he is a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. And it is an honor and a pleasure to also let you know that my guest is the current and is the Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, one of Nigeria's highly rated institutes and a think tank institution known globally. Please join me in welcoming my guest, who is Professor Osita Eze. Prof, you're very welcome to the Benie Uche Show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time and your patience. I know you're heading to the airport, but you've been gracious enough to stop by and grant us this long awaited interview.
Thank you very much indeed.
I want to say well done on the job you're doing. It's not easy. And then uneasy lies the head that wears a crown, like they say. And then I know that sometimes your institute has, come under the heat and fire, but you've been able to weather the storm and keep the institute together and keep it going. But before we get into that, I would like you to talk a bit to us, my guest. Why law? Why international law? And why international affairs? Why did you pick an interest in this area?
Well, I think it's a matter of a decision I came to at a much earlier age. I had a choice between medicine and law. And I thought that medicine would take too much of my time and constrain my freedom. So I decided that law was more in tune with my temperament. And I decided to read law. International relations came by the way, because that was even when I decided to study the doctorate in Geneva. And they asked me, what do you want to write your PhD on? And I said, I wanted to do something on investment laws and regulations in a common market. That common market was the East African common market. And the question was, have you read any economics? I said no. Have you read any international relations? I said no. I said, how then do you intend to write a legal thesis on investments when you don't understand the economics of it, you don't understand the politics of it? I'm sorry we have to put you on a program to study these subjects. So I got integrated into the program. For a year, I had to study and pass exams in economics and international relations. So that initiated me into these subjects. And I thank God that I went to Geneva to do my PhD, because it gave me a wider vista and a better understanding, because I did my master's in economic law in London And I studied institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, the GATT, but I knew the legal aspects of it, but the economic terms that I came across, I didn't quite understand. But with this background, I was now able to understand the foundations of the law. You know, the point is that if you're talking about international relations, you're talking about law, you're talking about, all these are interwoven, interlinked. The law itself is a kind of a superstructure. So when you talk about economic understanding, economic agreement between one country and the other, that is normally formalized. It's an economic agreement. The law simply formalizes what has been reached on economic basis. The same with politics, every other thing. So all are integrated. So it's good if one has, even if it's not a full measure of economic knowledge or political knowledge, that you have this understanding because it enhances your capacity to be more efficient in the area of international relations.
Interesting. Very well said. Then that leads me to my next question. You know, having come through all this, you know, and then also with your stint in Dar es Salaam, did you, you know, find this easy to integrate after all that program you went through, and then very into Dar es Salaam?
In fact, my sojourn in Dar es Salaam deepened this approach to the study of, if you like, social sciences, because law is actually seen as a part of social science, in the sense that it is an instrument by which you control social behavior, and therefore you cannot separate it from the rest of social sciences. In Dar es Salaam, actually, when I was in the law faculty, subjects were taught in context. So if we are teaching land law, you didn't just teach abstract land law. You taught land law and also taught about the implications of land policy. So it was not just pure law. You taught the pure law, of course. You had to go to court. You had to draft agreements on land and all that. But it was also important to let the students, and the lawyers also know, that the law itself regulated policies, regulated human interactions, regulated human conditions in society. And those conditions are what the law tries to encapsulate. And therefore, that the law itself is not a set of abstract rules, but an embodiment of social vibrations in society, and that in order to understand really the essence of the law, you have to understand the underpinnings of law in society, which include the economics of it, the politics of it, and the socials of it.
That leads me to, it might be a little bit sensitive in a way, but then, you know, talking about land law and all that, and border laws, especially when you have to deal with, you know, borders between countries. Nigeria had an issue with Bakassi. You know, does it mean that those were supposed to interpret these laws at the time didn't?
Well,
how did that happen?
That is much more complex. And I think that it is an issue that we cannot really settle here, because there's a divided there's a divided opinion on the matter, because it's a much complex issue. In the end, we lost before the International Court of Justice, because they say Cameroon had a better legal position than Nigeria had. But it shows you also that there's hardly anything that is removed from the sphere of international relations. Here is a typical case. When I was talking about land, I didn't even think about Bakassi, but it's good you captured it. And now you find that Bakassi was a major international issue between Nigeria and Cameroon. And it wasn't really Bakassi, because the issue was from the northern part of Nigeria down to the coast, but people talk about Bakassi because of his special position, and Bakassi because of the special interest Nigeria had in Bakassi. But here again we have this boundary, and we've been trying to, again as a matter of foreign policy, trying to demarcate our borders with our neighbors so that we have peaceful borderline relations with them. So again, land is the issue. So land is a matter for foreign policy, which goes to show that when you talk about foreign policy, it's no longer limited in scope. In fact, as we go on, you will discover that there are many other issues that have injected themselves into the area of foreign policy. And the policy for foreign policy now requires even much more expertise, wider in scope, deeper in essence. than had been the case before.
Prof, I also want to take you now to your area. When I say area, the think tank you're sitting on. I know this think tank didn't just exist. It must have been founded by certain pillars. Would you like to share an insight? Because it's really an issue that also deals with foreign affairs, and I'm sure your office has, a role it plays with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What are the pillars responsible for the founding of Nigerian Institute of International Affairs?
Interestingly, the Institute of International Affairs was funded by mostly lawyers, the former Chief Justice and some senior lawyers and some others who played a role. But when they were founding it, they had a foresight. And the foresight was they thought to themselves, we are looking at a Nigeria that is likely to play a major role in the future of the Committee of Nations, and a world that is likely to grow more complex. And they didn't simply say, we are going to have people with the knowledge of politics. No, they said, these institutes must have a broader base. So they said, to qualify to be a researcher, which is the main thing we do, you must either be a lawyer, an economist, or a political scientist or social scientist, as the case may be. Because these three disciplines are the core disciplines that you require to drive foreign policy and international relations. And the vision was that Nigerian foreign policy, as a major player in international relations, should be driven by well-founded research and well-founded knowledge on how we should interact with the external world. And if you look back, you find that as soon as Nigeria became independent, we became a player in the international scene. Just remember that with the Congo conflict, we were already peacekeeping. And since then, we have never stopped. All the process of decolonization in Africa and so many other things we've done, litany of them, Nigeria has done, has been part and the history of Nigeria has been part and parcel of active international relations for Africa and for Nigeria as well. And increasingly, of course, we have to begin to pay attention to Nigeria in terms of what we do in our foreign relations.
The Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, has been regarded in some sectors and as just being there to help people use it as a platform for a lecture series. I know the Institute has come up with its own lecture series, and I think this is a good opportunity for you to throw more light on that.
No, you see, I think there are certain misconceptions about the work of the Institute, and people have not really bothered. I think if for anybody, any serious researcher, and I know that there have been some write-ups in the papers,
Yeah, there were.
We don't normally try to respond to such things in the papers. I know there have been some write-ups which allege that the Institute was being used for conferences, but of course, this is false. And it's unfortunate that one of the persons who wrote this actually cited our website. And our website clearly indicates that we have been doing so much more. Not only have we had many in-house conferences, published so many books on various core areas and critical areas of interest to Nigeria in terms of our foreign policy. Particularly, for instance, one of the things we did was when we saw how Nigerians were being treated in several countries, we thought we should now gather brains, both practitioners in the past, current practitioners, scholars, and look at this issue of reciprocity. How do we respond? And we organized a conference on foreign policy, reciprocity, and international relations. And we invited all these people. And we published a book on that. And we have done something on trade liberalization. We've done something on climate change. We've done something, in fact, the latest thing we've done is that we've now looked at our foreign policy over the past 50 years and produced what I might call our flagship publication, which is beyond 50 years of Nigeria's foreign policy, which looks not just at what we've been doing, but how we can use foreign policy to guide Nigeria to achieve its 2020 objective. In other words, we are saying that foreign policy can play an important part part in supporting efforts at domestic level to enable Nigeria achieve her objectives in becoming a major player in the world in the next 20 years. And that is what it should be doing. And that is what we have tried to put forward, both for government and for the Nigerian populace, to provide a basis for debate and to see how together Nigerians can use foreign policy as a means of promoting development at home in order to support our quest for leadership that will promote further development and also the respect for Nigerians everywhere.
Okay. Prof, also, somebody wants an email, saying, but how does one become a member? Is it a membership institute? And what are the departments you have in the institute?
No, anybody can become a member of the institute. We have a section on that deals with, you just have to pick up a form. We have a form that you pick up and you fill it and you pay some token amount and you become a member and you're entitled to membership privileges, invitation to public lectures, to conferences, and to some other things that we do. Departments, we have all kinds of departments. We have institutions, we have legal, we have economic, and we have several departments. But we are at the moment
a library, a very good library too.
Yeah, we have, our library is, I can say that our library is definitely the best library in the country on foreign policy. There's none like it, and we upgrade it, and currently we are trying to upgrade it to a level where we can access information on foreign policy globally, through the ICT network. If we get the money to do so, we should be able to be doing that by next year. We're already working on it. So we have a very good library in the institute, easily accessible to people. But of course, because of the limitations we have, we have to limit the number of people who can use it. Otherwise, we'll be overwhelmed by the people who want to use it. So people can become members of the institute, and I think we encourage people actually, and we encourage people to come to our conferences and to interact with us so that at least we get enriched by other perspectives in foreign policy.
Do you run training programs apart from the lectures?
We did run training programs, but what we are trying to do is we want to see whether we can upgrade, with the permission of the Ministry of Education, whether we can upgrade those programs to masters, because people are not happy when they get a diploma certificate that does not help them get anything substantive. So they say, why should we spend a year doing a diploma if that diploma cannot give us appointment or cannot improve our status in where we work? Why don't you make it? And this is because people have been complaining. Not that the diploma is not qualitative, because some of the top officials we've had in the past in government have passed through the institute. At least when I was at the institute for the first time, I know I taught some of the people who later rose to the highest rank in government, who passed through that, including people at the NTA. Some of the top managers of NTA passed through our program.
What about ambassadors?
Some of them, yes. Some of them also, yes. Some of them passed through. But now what we do is that some of our staff now teach at the Foreign Service Academy, where they teach diplomats, yes.
Prof, you've also been known to represent Nigeria in a lot of international conferences and forums, and I'm wondering,